what Reform, Farage's party, are going to do in councils that they've taken over, because they've got about 10 now. And they've got a DOGE team in Kent. You will love this.
I do love this.
Go
I
on.
really hope that they actually do this properly. They really do look at this. So they are sending a DOGE team into Kent Council. So they're going to be looking at trying to make some savings. They've got a budget of £2.5 billion. Farage and the chairman of Reform UK, Zia Youssef, are both looking at trying to reduce those particular spending. I mean, look, it'll be really interesting to see how much of this is actually feasible. Nigel Farage has said a lot about the things that spend a lot of money. I mean, things like equality, diversity and inclusion schemes, things like net zero. Although, to be quite frank, a lot of that spending and a lot of those restrictions, although I'm totally pro them repealing those regulations, I think that actually a lot of the savings that will actually come from government will be quite minuscule. So it will be really interesting to see where they actually make those cuts. But I'm absolutely supportive of it.
But the thing is, that, as I understand it, the council's problem is they're being told to do a load of stuff by the government.
Exactly.
And the classic example is social care, particularly elderly people in care homes. Now, as a result, I saw a picture from the centre of Bristol the other day, and it said, why is Bristol such a, look, let's just use polite language here. Why does it look like a slum when 30 years ago it was beautiful? And the answer is the council doesn't put flowers in the city centre anymore, because that's the first thing to go.
Yeah, when they
now, if you're Farage and you're DOGE Farage, do you bring the flowers back?
I think you'd probably cut a lot of staff wages. I mean, I remember the Taxpayers Alliance, a think tank in London, they were looking at a lot of council spending. And I remember a couple of years ago, somebody at Guildford Council received £600,000 in a single year in remuneration. £600,000.
Yeah.
Nobody needs that. It's more than the Prime Minister. You don't need that amount of money. So there absolutely are places to cut spending. But Jeremy, you're absolutely right. The majority of spending for a lot of councils is on things like adult social care. It's on things that the majority of the public
would you want to bring the flowers back?
Yeah, so some councils, you're right, are spending up to 80% of their budget on adult social care.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've had years and years of austerity. On net zero, for instance, the mayor of Lincoln, she said she wants to cut net zero. That's 12,500 jobs that are going to lose from Lincoln, just based on some kind of ideology.
That's a waste of taxpayer money.
Can you defend net zero?
Yeah. But I mean,
Lincoln being net zero, what's the point?
Well, I mean, the whole point, I think, is to protect our planet, but also it reduces people's bills, and also it creates cleaner air, it creates more jobs that we can have. And I think ultimately what we need to be doing...
It increases people's bills. The fact that we're not drilling in the North Sea means that we've got a restricted energy supply, and it absolutely makes
That's
energy more
absurd.
expensive.
If we insulate every single home in Britain that needs it, that would reduce bills
Who's paying
and
for that?
create jobs. We are, because ultimately we're reducing our bill.
Taxpayers are paying for this. Is the thing, and I completely understand.
It's spending to invest. It's investing.
Why should the government be forced to do that, and why should taxpayers?
Well, the government aren't forced to do it. We vote in the government, and then the government choose. In the same way that the Attlee government set up the National Health Service in the response to the crisis.
I think it's absolutely incorrect.
That arguably hasn't gone well.
Well, I would say the National Health Service hasn't gone well because we've not funded it properly.
Oh my God, £200 billion a year. We absolutely have funded the NHS well. Too well,
and we have some of the best health outcomes in the world.
No, we don't. We've got the second highest avoidable mortality rates in all of Western Europe.
Well, you picked one very specific outcome there that's important.
On basically all available outcomes, the NHS is falling way far behind. We have some of the worst survival rates for cancer.
Where did we start with this? We've ended up with the NHS. We started at Kent Council.
We're talking about the need.
Kent Council.
We're talking about the spending of public services.
Yeah, okay, right.
The dangers of austerity. Ultimately, both the Conservative government and now a Labour government.
What austerity? We're paying the highest tax burden we have since the Second World War. We are spending huge amounts of money on the government. Are people feeling as though they're seeing public services improve?
So where I agree is let's tax wealth and not income. We are taxing far too much to earned income as opposed to unearned wealth.
So you go door to door? Yeah.
So we could put a 1%
on yachts,
tax on
jewellery.
Well, assets are £10 million or more. If you
watch every single wealthy person in the country leave if you do that.
Well, that's just not true because now
it is.
Actually,
a millionaire leaves the UK every 45 minutes.
I'm talking about assets. Assets can't just move. Duke of Westminster, he owns half of Mayfair. Mayfair can't just move.
But when you take, okay, this is a fascinating discussion. You go to the Duke of Westminster, you say, we reckon you're worth 100 billion and we want 50 billion off you. And let's say he can't move for various reasons. You take the 50, it's not there anymore. So it's only a one-off hit.
And you use that money to invest to ultimately stimulate our economy.
Where does this end?
About 1% here.
Where does this end? The government already spend more than 50% of GDP. Where does this end? We are already taxing people to the oblivion. Working people are footing the bill. Quite frankly, I want the government to be smaller. I want the government to spend less. And I think that something like DOGE should be implemented.
But look at where DOGE, they brought DOGE in. Oh, excuse me. If I mention DOGE, somebody coughs. They brought DOGE in the States. And a number of weird things have happened. They've cut all the foreign aid in the States virtually, and a load of other stuff as well.
And can I add, we're also the outlier. Across Europe, social democracy is all I'm talking about.
They cut forestry stuff.
They have. I mean, I think what's interesting is there needs to be a balance to be struck here. I actually think that when it comes to things like net zero, there are so many places in which we're able to make those particular cuts. I don't think that the approach should be on EDI and net zero in terms of spending cuts, but there absolutely are places we can cut spending.
I'll call it a score draw. You've fought well. We
Big
started
battle.
on Kent Council.